Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me in tonight's webinar. I want to thank Shaun Manning and his team at Next Level Baseball for giving me the opportunity to speak to parents of the players of Next Level Baseball. We have some 10th grade parents out there tonight and obviously 11th grade parents, and I'm very happy to be given this opportunity to share with you some information that should be helpful as you navigate this very challenging year for your children. The topics that I'm going to cover in tonight's webinar, first I'm going to talk about the difference between ACT and SAT. I get a lot of questions from parents about which test is the better test for their children to take, and I wanted to just give you some of my ideas on that. I also want to give you some tips about registering for the exams. There are some concerns about possible test cancellations for our current juniors, so I wanted to talk to you about that. Changes to testing sites due to COVID-19, what test optional means, the pros and the cons, the importance of the college application essay, and what we here at LITE do to help children and parents navigate junior year. So first, the difference between ACT and SAT. So both tests gauge college readiness. Both tests are accepted by colleges and universities throughout the country. There isn't one test that's favored more than another. There's a misconception that the SAT colleges want more than the ACT. That's not the case. Our students get into Ivy League schools with just their ACT. And so both gauge college readiness. The ACT is a little bit shorter than the SAT, but really not by much. Both tests will allow your child to earn merit money based on the score that they get. And that score could range from a 27 to a 36. It really depends on the school and what they are willing to award based on the score that a student earned. Statistically, more schools offer merit money based on ACT scores than they do on SAT scores, but colleges do offer merit-based scholarships to students based on SAT scores as well. The structure of the exam is pretty similar. They both test grammar, math, reading. The ACT does have a science reasoning section. SAT doesn't have a dedicated section to science, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. And they both have an optional essay. A perfect score on the ACT is a 36, and a perfect score on the SAT is a 1600. Average ACT score nationally is anywhere from a 20 to 21. Average SAT score nationally is about a 1060. Now, the timing of the exams is different. ACT typically pacing is a challenge for students, especially in the beginning, but that does get better with practice tests, and with more knowledge of the material, students become more confident with the material, and they tend to get much better with their pacing. SAT does have more time per question. However, SAT questions may take longer to analyze than ACT questions, and so that extra time there is needed. Grammar sections, so they both have grammar sections. ACT English has more of a focus on grammar, punctuation, sentence structure. SAT Writing and Language, that's their grammar section, that's more focused on writing style, vocabulary, a little bit of trickier answer choice phrasing. The reading level of the grammar sections on the ACT is about a 9th grade reading level. SAT passages can vary from early high school to early college reading level. The math sections, ACT math does test a wider range of topics. They go into a little bit more geometry. There are matrices and logarithms that your children are all too familiar with, or if not yet, they definitely will be. But all of the questions on the ACT math are multiple choice, and a calculator is permitted throughout. That's not the case with SAT math. So SAT math, the level isn't as high in some ways as ACT math. However, the way the questions are worded is more challenging. There's a section where there's no multiple choice. It's what's called grid-ins, where a child gets a question, they actually have to write in the answer. That could be a little daunting to some students. There's a section with no calculator. That could be a little challenging, but the SAT math does provide geometry formulas in the beginning of each math section, and so that could be helpful. We do always encourage kids, though, to have their formulas memorized so that they don't have to flip back and look at that. The reading on the ACT is a little more straightforward. It's more reading comprehension, less critical analysis, whereas the SAT reading is more critical analysis. There are questions that are evidence-based questions that build on questions before. So for example, there'll be a question, and then the question after it will ask you, where did you find the answer to that question in the passage? And so if you got the first question wrong, you're more likely to get the second question wrong that builds on it. So that could be a little tricky for students. The wording on the SAT is a little more tricky as well. The reading level on the ACT is about a 10th to 11th grade reading level across all of the passages, whereas the SAT reading level varies anywhere from 9th grade reading level to early college from passage to passage. The science, okay, so now there's a big misconception. I have parents that will say to me, well, my son is not strong in science, so maybe the SAT is a better test for him. That's a misconception. That's not the case. I'm not tutoring physics. I'm not tutoring chemistry. The science section on the ACT is more testing students on how well they can analyze data, look at trends in a chart. It's not testing specific knowledge in earth science, for example. The SAT doesn't have a dedicated science section, but they do have science questions throughout the exam. Obviously not to the degree that the ACT does, but you will see a chart here and there. As high schools and colleges place greater emphasis on STEM than ever before, the ACT science section is a benefit. It does show colleges that your child does have ability in science, they have scientific prowess, and they might not even be the best science student, but they can still do very well in the science section, and that can only be an extra data point for colleges on your child. There is also the optional essay. I always recommend that students take the test with essay. Reason being that you don't know what the college is going to want. There are some schools that require or recommend the essay, and there are some colleges that don't. And so unless you know the one specific and only school you're going to apply to, then I highly recommend just take it with essay. The essay is a separate score, so it's not going to affect a student's overall score out of 36 on the ACT or out of 1600 on the SAT. It's a separate score, and it's really coachable. There's a rubric, there's a way to write it. And so I highly recommend that students write the optional essay. And again, just another way for admissions officers to evaluate them. So the bottom line is, what should we do? Should we choose ACT or SAT? What I do recommend is that you choose one, go with one, so that a student's not splitting his test prep efforts. I do recommend ACT over SAT initially. All of our students in the program, for example, start with ACT. And if you have a child that does want to try SAT, that's fine. Everything that you're learning for ACT applies to SAT. The curriculum is the same. It's just the test itself is different. And so it's really a matter of which test a student will gravitate more toward. But overwhelmingly, I do prefer the straightforwardness of the ACT. That's why if you're on the fence, I recommend ACT. And then you could always decide SAT down the road. So tips when registering, definitely register for the exams sooner rather than later. The reason being that the sooner you register, the more opportunity you have of taking the test closer to home. The longer you wait, the farther away from home your child may have to take the exam. So I recommend registering for all three ACTs, February, April, and June. SAT, if that's an option, March, May, and June. Again, do it with the essay. There's an option when you register to get a copy of the test. For the ACT, it's called Test Information Release, and you could get it for the December, April, and June exams. And for the SAT, it's called Question and Answer Service, and that's for the October, March, and May exams. I definitely recommend it's for a small extra fee. You basically get a copy of the test, a blank copy, and you can use it to prep for the next exam. So for example, if you get it for the April test, you'll have it in time to review for the June exam. So definitely look into that when you do register. Both tests, ACT and SAT, also superscore, which basically means that they'll take the best, let's say they take the best English from the February exam, the best math from the April exam, and the best reading and science from the June exam, and then you have one separate superscore that you can send to colleges. Now, not every college superscores, so that's definitely a question you want to ask, but more and more schools do, and so it's definitely to a child's benefit to take the test at least twice, if not 3 times, because A, they may superscore, and B, statistically, with every exam, a student's scores get higher and higher, they get stronger and better. And so, like I said, definitely register. I recommend registering for all three at once. And then there's also the July test that doesn't affect early applications. There's also the September test in senior year that doesn't affect early action or early decision. But first register for these three, and then you can always cross that bridge when you get to it. Now, there are concerns. Parents are asking me, like, what about test cancellations? What if there's another, quarantine? What are we going to do? I can say that we have a lot of seniors, current seniors, who did go through this. They experienced a ton of test cancellations in the spring and in the summer. I did have some kids that were able to take the test in July, but that was really not that many. They took them out of state. But there were many kids that were able to take the test in September. I got a lot of texts and phone calls yesterday and today, kids very happy with their scores. And so ACT and College Board are making a lot of efforts to get kids to take the exams. And so that shouldn't be any different for your kids. So rest assured that it's very, very likely they're going to take the test. If schools are open, basically that means the test is going to happen. ACT added 2 more dates in September and 3 dates in October. There's also an exam in December for the current seniors. Juniors have 4 tests between February and July that they can take the test. And then the SAT added another test in September for this year. So seniors could take a test every month between August and December. And the current juniors have 3 tests between March and June that they can take. There's also a test in August. So there are a lot of opportunities for your child to take the exam. Basically, like I said, if schools are open, then the schools are going to administer the exam. It's not ACT and College Board that cancels the test. It's the place that's housing the exam. But to try to combat that, they're trying to, like, I have a student this week who's taking an SAT this Saturday at a Marriott. And so we have more and more kids taking tests at colleges, universities, hotels, to try to separate them. So they're making every effort possible to get your child to be able to take the test. I do recommend checking social media for the most recent updates. If you have Twitter or Instagram, check out the handle for ACT and SAT. And they're very good at posting updates so that you can stay on top of everything. Changes to testing sites that you should be aware of that your child is going to be experiencing. So to provide social distancing, like I just said before, there's going to be more centers, so there's more seats, more space between the children. Students are going to be required to wear masks. They do have to remove the mask just to correspond with their ID, photo ID, but they're going to have to put their mask right back on again. A big tip that I could give you is to have your child practice when they start taking practice tests, to do so with a mask on. Here at Long Island Tutoring and Enrichment, we have our students taking practice tests with their mask on, so that when they go and take it for real, it's not a big deal for them. If you go with another program, or even if you have your child doing it at home, I highly recommend they do it with a mask, because that's what's going to happen on game day, so they might as well practice with it now. There's also going to be no standby testing. Standby testing basically means that if you passed the late registration deadline, there was still an opportunity for you to try to take the test standby, where you would go to a test center, and if a child maybe was a no-show, or if there's room in that center, then you would be able to get that spot and you could take the test. They're doing away with that now, indefinitely at least. So basically just make sure you get your registrations in time. Try to do it all at once, like I said, so that you don't have to worry about any of that. There's also going to be regular screening when they walk into the test center, just like they would in most stores now, and doctors' offices and things like that, where they just are going to be asked a bunch of questions about their health and their wellness. Some schools are going test optional, so I wanted to talk a little bit about what that means. Test optional has been in place for a long time now, but more and more schools have become test optional for the current seniors, especially for those students who are unable to take a test or who are unable to get any kind of tutoring in. They're not going to be penalized if they're not able to take tests. Test optional allows students who maybe never were able to apply to a school before to apply now and possibly be accepted. But it is important to keep in mind that just because a school is test optional does not mean it's any easier to get into. And so it's just as hard, it's just as rigorous. So you still want your grades to be where they're supposed to be, take those rigorous classes. Now, the downsides to applying test optional is that as difficult as these exams are, they are excellent predictors of a student's potential success in college. And so admissions officers have a very difficult time if they don't have that standardized measure of academic readiness to determine whether or not a student is going to be successful in their school. Many high schools have adjusted their grading approach in recent times. So colleges are faced with the challenge of accurately evaluating these grades. And without a score, every part of the application is now looked at more closely. Another downside is that by not submitting a score, a student is excluded from the thousands of dollars he could earn from merit scholarships. With every point, thousands and thousands of dollars could be awarded. There's a difference between a 30 and a 31, a 31 and a 32. It could mean so much money for a child and make or break whether or not they can go to that school. Without a score, you're not even giving yourself that opportunity. It's also important to note that typically only a small percentage of students applying to test optional schools actually don't send a score. So you want to be able to set yourself apart from the other kids with a score. It's just making you that much more marketable to these admissions officers. Also, a lot of student athletes, the coaches want to see a score, something to have a baseline evaluation of the student's academic prowess. And without a score, they might not have the opportunity to qualify for those coaches. So it's another reason why it's important to take the test. The college application essay has always been important, but now it's more important than ever because there's disruption in sports and in clubs. There are some schools that the clubs haven't even started yet, or if they are going to start, they're going to be mostly online. And so there's just a lot of disruptions going on. The sports might be condensed this year and students might not have an opportunity to play at all. And so they don't have those things to help build their resume. Therefore, the college application essay is going to be their way of taking advantage of the ability to show their potential for success at the school. The essay is very personalized. It can make a very strong, lasting impression. Thousands may have the same GPA, but only you have your own voice, your own story, and you want to make that known to the school. Just a note about that, a side note, there are many people out there that will write your child's essay for him. I highly recommend that you stay away from that. Here at LITE, we have an AP English teacher, high school English teacher. He works with our students, but he helps them write it through their voice. It's their essay. He's helping to tweak it and fine tune it and hone it, maybe get them to dissect what it is that they actually want to write about, but it has to be in their own voice. These admissions officers are used to seeing thousands upon thousands of essays, and they're able to decipher whether or not that essay is written in the student's own authentic voice or whether an adult wrote it. So keep that in mind, that you want this essay to be strong, but in your child's own voice. The essay is very reliable. Admissions officers use it as a tangible tool to help them assess your child's potential at their college, and it sets them apart. If you have a sincere, well-written essay that shows that child's unique personality and passion, then it really will set them apart from all the other kids that are applying to that school. So finally, here at Long Island Tutoring Enrichment, we do have different kind of programs for all different subject areas, but we do focus for you guys on ACT and SAT. There's one-on-one tutoring. There's also small group classes. If you're interested in registering for one of our classes or registering for one-on-one, feel free to visit our website. You can register right there online. Our classes begin this week and next. The first step before a child can take a class is, or even one-on-one tutoring, is we do have them take a diagnostic ACT. We give tests every Saturday and Sunday. So if you're interested, then feel free to reach out to me, go on the website. You can either go to, I can show you right now, if you go to the website, this is the homepage. If you scroll to the bottom, this section here, subscribe, you can write in your email, sign up, and I could send you information. Feel free to call and or email me any question. It doesn't even have to be about registering for the program. If you just want to ask a question about the process, ask a question about the ACT, about the college application essay, SAT subject tests, all of these things, feel free to reach out. I am more than happy to answer any questions you have. I want to help the parents just as much as I want to help the children. So use me as a resource. I'm here if you need me. And here is our phone number, our Twitter handle, Instagram. email address, anything you need, phone numbers up there, addresses up there, anything you need, reach out. I'm always happy to help. I hope you guys have a great night. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will talk to you soon.